I received $10,000 every single month, and yet that night I was sitting in the dark wondering if hunger could actually make a person disappear. The house was so quiet it felt like the walls were holding their breath, and I sat there in my armchair with my hands folded in my lap, trying to ignore the sharp, twisting ache in my stomach as it folded in on itself again and again. The lights had been off for hours because I was afraid to turn them on, not because I couldn't, but because somewhere along the way I had started believing I shouldn't. My fingers felt cold, my throat tight, and the silence pressed against my ears until even the smallest sound felt too loud. I stared at the outline of my kitchen, barely visible in the dim light coming through the window, and I already knew what I would see if I stood up and walked over there. Empty shelves. An empty refrigerator. A single bottle of water sitting in the corner like it didn't belong to me. I stayed silent, even though no one was there to hear me, because silence had become a habit, something I wore like a second skin. It hadn't always been like this. I used to cook full meals, real meals, with warm bread and soup that filled the house with the kind of smell that made people feel safe. I used to sit at the table and laugh, and I used to feel like this house was mine. But that night, sitting in the dark, I felt like a guest in my own life, like someone had slowly taken pieces of it away without me noticing until there was almost nothing left. My hands trembled slightly as I pressed them together, trying to stop the shaking, trying to stay calm the way I always told myself to. Then I heard it. The front door opening. The sound was sudden, sharp against the silence, and my heart jumped so hard it felt like it hit my ribs. Light flooded into the hallway as the door swung wider, and I blinked against it, my eyes not ready for brightness anymore. "Mom," my daughter's voice called out, soft at first, then sharper, worried. Footsteps moved quickly across the floor, and before I could even think about standing up, the light snapped on. The room came into focus all at once, every detail exposed, every shadow gone, and I felt something inside me tighten as if I had been caught doing something wrong. Emma stood there, her eyes scanning the room, taking in everything at once, the darkness, the cold, the stillness. "Mom, why are you sitting in the dark?" she asked, her voice low but shaking slightly. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. I stayed silent. She didn't wait for an answer. She walked past me, straight into the kitchen, and I could hear the refrigerator door open. Then there was a pause. A long one. Too long. "Mom," she said again, this time quieter, but heavier, like the word itself carried weight. "Why is there no food?" My chest tightened, and I stared straight ahead, unable to turn around, unable to explain something I didn't fully understand myself. Then she said the words that changed everything. "You get $10,000 every month, so where is it?" And in that moment, sitting there under the bright light, with my hand still trembling in my lap, I realized that whatever had been happening in silence was about to be seen. Emma stood there in the kitchen, her hand still resting on the refrigerator door as if she was waiting for something to appear, as if maybe she had opened the wrong one by mistake and any second now it would be full. But it was not. It was exactly what I already knew it was. Empty. I could hear the faint hum of the appliance, steady and indifferent, and it made the silence feel even heavier. "Mom," she said again, turning slowly toward me, her eyes searching my face like she was trying to find an answer written somewhere on it. "You get $10,000 every month. That is more than enough for groceries, bills, everything. So where is it going?" My throat felt tight, and I swallowed, but the words would not come. I stayed silent, just like I had so many times before, because silence felt safer than saying something wrong. Her footsteps moved closer, soft but quick, and then she was standing right in front of me. I could feel her presence, her concern, her confusion. "Mom, look at me," she said gently, but there was urgency underneath it now. I lifted my eyes slowly, and for a moment I saw something in her expression that made my chest ache even more than the hunger. It was not just worry. It was disbelief. Like she was trying to understand how the person who raised her could end up like this. Before I could even try to answer, another voice came from behind her, calm and controlled, as if nothing was wrong at all. "Because she does not need more." Rachel stepped into the light, her posture straight, her expression composed, like she had been standing there the whole time, just waiting for the right moment to speak. Emma turned quickly, her body tensing. "What do you mean she does not need more?" Rachel folded her arms lightly, not defensive, just certain. "I manage her finances now. It is easier this way. She does not have to worry about anything." The words settled into the room like they belonged there, like they had been said many times before. My fingers tightened slightly in my lap. Emma's eyes moved between us, confusion turning into something sharper. "You manage everything," she repeated slowly. Rachel nodded once. "Every dollar," she said. "Bills are paid. The house is maintained. There is nothing to be concerned about." Emma glanced back toward the kitchen, toward the empty shelves, and then back at Rachel. "Nothing to be concerned about," she said, her voice quieter now, but heavier. "There is no food." Rachel did not look at the kitchen. She kept her eyes on Emma. "She has what she needs," she replied. I felt my stomach twist again, but this time it was not just hunger. It was something deeper, something harder to ignore. Emma took a step closer to Rachel, her shoulders squared, her voice steady but no longer soft. "Then explain it to me," she said. "Explain how someone who receives $10,000 a month is sitting in the dark with no food in her own house." Rachel's expression did not change, but there was a pause, just a small one, like a crack forming in something that had always looked solid. "You do not understand the full situation," she said carefully. "There are investments, allocations, long-term planning." Emma let out a slow breath, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Investments," she repeated, as if testing the word. Then she looked at me again, really looked this time, at my hands, at my face, at the way I sat there like I did not belong in my own chair. "Mom," she said softly, but there was something different in her voice now, something stronger. "Did you agree to this?" My heart began to beat faster, loud in my chest, and for a moment I could feel the weight of every decision I had not questioned, every paper I had signed without fully reading. I opened my mouth, my hands trembling again, and this time the silence did not feel safe anymore. I looked at Emma, and for a moment I felt like I was standing at the edge of something I could not step back from. My hands trembled in my lap, and I pressed them together, trying to steady them, but the shaking would not stop. I signed something," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. The words felt heavy as they left my mouth, like they had been waiting there for a long time. Emma's expression changed immediately, her brows drawing together as she leaned closer. "What did you sign, Mom?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. I swallowed again, my throat dry, my heart beating faster with each second. "Daniel said it was for safety," I continued slowly. "He said I should not handle everything alone anymore. He said it would be easier if Rachel helped manage things." I could feel Rachel's eyes on me, but I did not look at her. I kept my gaze on Emma, because something in her face told me I needed to keep going. "He said it was just in case something happened. Just in case I forgot something. Just in case I needed help." My voice shook slightly, and I paused, trying to catch my breath. "So I signed it." Emma did not interrupt, but I could see the tension building in her shoulders, the way her hands tightened at her sides. "Did you read it?" she asked after a moment. The question hung in the air, simple but sharp. I hesitated. That hesitation said more than any answer I could have given. Not really," I admitted, my voice smaller now. "They explained it to me. They said it was just permission to help. I trusted them." The word trusted felt fragile, like something that could break if I touched it too hard. Emma exhaled slowly, and I saw something shift in her eyes, something that was no longer just concern. It was understanding. Not of the situation, but of what had been done to me. Behind her, Rachel let out a soft breath, almost like a quiet laugh, though there was no humor in it. "There is nothing wrong with what she signed," Rachel said evenly. "It is a standard arrangement. Daniel and I are simply managing her assets more efficiently." Emma turned her head slightly, her gaze locking onto Rachel. Managing, she repeated. She is sitting in the dark. There is no food in the house. Rachel did not move. She has access to what she needs, she replied. If she asks. My stomach twisted again at those words. If she asks. I had asked before. I remembered the small envelopes, the careful tone, the polite smiles. How much do you need? Rachel would say, as if it were a favor, not my own money. $50. $100. Always small amounts. Always controlled. Mom, Emma said softly, drawing my attention back to her. When was the last time you saw your bank statement? I blinked, trying to remember. The months blurred together, one quiet day after another. I do not know, I admitted. She handles it now. Emma's jaw tightened, and for a moment she looked down, as if she was putting something together in her mind, piece by piece. Then she looked back up at me, and there was no hesitation left in her expression. Okay, she said, her voice steady now, grounded in something stronger than before. Then tomorrow, we are going to the bank. The words landed in the room with a quiet finality, like a line had been drawn. Rachel's posture shifted just slightly, her composure cracking for the first time. That is not necessary, she said quickly. But Emma did not look at her. She kept her eyes on me. Yes, it is, she said. And as I sat there, feeling my heart pound in my chest, I realized something had changed. Not in the room. Not in Rachel. But in Emma. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I had almost forgotten. A small, steady warmth, like a light turning back on inside me. The room felt different after Emma said those words, like the air itself had shifted, and I could feel it in my chest, tight and unfamiliar, like something waking up that had been quiet for too long. Rachel stood very still for a moment, her arms still folded, but I noticed the small change in her posture, the slight tension in her shoulders that had not been there before. We can talk about this later, she said, her voice smooth but a little faster now, like she was trying to regain control of something that had started to slip. There is no reason to make this into a bigger issue than it is. Emma did not move. She stood between us, steady, grounded, and for the first time since she walked in, she did not look uncertain. It is already a big issue, she said quietly. She is sitting in the dark with no food. That is not normal. I felt my hands tighten again in my lap, but this time it was not just fear. It was something else, something harder to name. Rachel let out a slow breath, then walked a few steps closer, her heels soft against the floor. Margaret agreed to this arrangement, she said, her tone more deliberate now, each word placed carefully. Everything has been handled properly. Emma's eyes flickered toward me again, and I could see the question there, still waiting, still unresolved. Did you, she asked gently. Did you understand what you agreed to? My heart began to pound again, louder this time, and I felt the memory rising whether I wanted it to or not. I stayed silent for a moment, but this silence felt different. It was not hiding. It was remembering. It had started 2 years ago, after I slipped in the garden one afternoon. It was not a serious fall, just enough to shake me, just enough for Daniel to look at me differently after that. I could still hear his voice, calm and concerned. Mom, you cannot keep doing everything alone, he had said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. What if something worse happens next time? I had laughed then, softly, brushing it off. I am fine, I told him. It was just a small fall. But he did not smile. He leaned forward, his hands folded, his voice steady in a way that made it hard to argue. It is not about today. It is about making sure you are protected. The word protected had sounded warm at the time, safe. Rachel had been there too, sitting beside him, nodding slightly, her expression calm, reassuring. We can help, she said. Just small things. Bills, transfers, making sure everything runs smoothly. You would not have to worry anymore. I remember how tired I felt that day, how easy it was to let someone else take responsibility, even just a little. They placed the papers in front of me, neat and simple, already marked where I needed to sign. "It is just authorization," Daniel said. "Nothing changes. It just gives us access if you need help." I had looked at the pages, the words blurring together in a way that made them feel less important than his voice. I trusted him. He was my son. So I signed. I signed because I believed I was making things easier, not giving anything away. I signed because I did not want to seem difficult. Sitting there now, under the bright light, I felt my chest tighten as the memory settled fully into place. I lifted my eyes slowly to Emma. "No," I said quietly, my voice steady in a way it had not been before. "I did not understand." The words seemed to echo in the room, simple but undeniable. Rachel's expression changed just for a second, a small flicker of something behind her eyes, before it smoothed over again. But Emma heard it. I knew she did. Because the way she stood, the way her shoulders straightened and her gaze sharpened, told me everything had just shifted. And for the first time, I was no longer the only one seeing it. Emma did not look away from me after I said those words, and for a moment the room felt completely still, like everything was waiting for what would happen next. I could hear my own breathing, slow but uneven, and the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, still empty, still unchanged. Rachel shifted her weight slightly, her composure returning in small, controlled movements, like she was carefully placing herself back into position. "Margaret is overwhelmed," she said, her tone softer now, almost sympathetic, but something about it felt rehearsed. "She is remembering things differently. That is normal at her age." The words landed quietly, but they carried a weight that made my chest tighten. At her age. I felt my fingers curl. Slightly against my palms, a small reaction I could not stop. Emma's head turned slowly toward Rachel, her expression no longer confused, no longer unsure. It was clear now. Focused. "Do not do that," Emma said, her voice calm but firm. "Do not make this about her memory." Rachel's lips pressed together for a brief second, but she recovered quickly. "I am not making it about anything," she replied. "I am explaining the situation. We are taking care of her. Everything is handled." Emma took a small step forward, closing the space between them just enough to make the tension in the room feel sharper. "If everything is handled," she said, "then why is she sitting in a dark house with no food?" Rachel did not answer immediately this time. That pause was different from before. It was not controlled. It was searching. I could feel it. I could see it in the way her eyes flickered for just a second, like she was choosing her next words more carefully now. "She prefers to keep things simple," Rachel said finally. "She does not need much." I felt something shift inside me again, something that no longer felt like fear. It felt like recognition. That sentence. I had heard it before. Many times. In different ways. When I asked about money. When I asked about groceries. When I asked about small things that used to feel normal. "You do not need much." I had repeated it to myself until it sounded true. Emma let out a slow breath, her shoulders rising and falling once, controlled. "Mom," she said again, turning back to me, her voice softer now but steady. "When was the last time you bought groceries?" I blinked, trying to pull the answer from somewhere in my memory, but the days blurred together, quiet and uneventful. I do not remember," I admitted. Saying it out loud made it feel heavier, more real. Emma nodded slightly, like she expected that answer. "And when you need money," she continued, "what do you do?" My hands trembled again, but I did not hide them this time. "I ask Rachel," I said. The words came out slowly, each one deliberate. "She gives me cash." Emma's eye shifted back to Rachel immediately. "How much?" she asked. Rachel straightened slightly, her voice returning to that calm, measured tone. "Enough," she said. Emma did not react. Right away. She just looked at her, steady, unblinking. How much? She repeated. There was another pause, longer this time. $50. Sometimes 100, Rachel answered. The numbers hung in the air, small and insignificant compared to what I received each month. Emma's expression did not change, but I could see it in her eyes now. The understanding was complete. You give her $50, she said slowly, out of 10,000. Rachel lifted her chin slightly. We are managing long-term assets, she replied. Short-term spending is controlled to maintain stability. The words sounded polished, practiced, like they were meant to make everything sound reasonable. But something about them no longer worked in the room. Not anymore. Emma took another step back, not retreating, but creating space, like she needed to see the whole picture clearly. Then she looked at me again, and this time there was no hesitation, no softness, just certainty. Mom, she said quietly, this is not help. I felt my breath catch slightly, and for a moment everything became very clear in a way it had not been before. I had not been helped. I had been managed. Controlled. Reduced. And the silence I had been holding onto for so long no longer felt like protection. It felt like something that had been used against me. The word stayed in my mind long after Emma said it, repeating quietly, steadily, like something that could not be pushed away anymore. This is not help. I sat there, feeling my chest rise and fall a little faster than before, my hand still trembling but no longer trying to hide it, and for the first time I allowed myself to look at everything the way it truly was instead of the way I had been told it was. Rachel shifted again, her posture tightening just slightly, and I could see that she understood something had changed, even if she was not ready to admit it out loud. You are overreacting, she said, her voice calm but thinner now, like it was stretched too tight. This is a normal financial arrangement. Many families do this. Emma did not respond immediately. She walked slowly into the kitchen, her eye scanning every surface, every cabinet, every empty space that told a story without needing words. I watched her open the pantry, then close it again, her movements careful, controlled. When she turned back, there was no doubt left in her face. No, she said quietly. This is not normal. Rachel let out a small breath, almost impatient. You are seeing one moment and making assumptions, she replied. You do not understand the full picture. Emma stepped back into the living room, closer to me this time, her presence steady, grounding in a way that made my chest feel less tight. Then explain the full picture, she said. Explain it clearly. Rachel hesitated again, and this time it was longer, more visible. We have been investing her money, she said finally. Building long-term security. Daniel has opportunities, business ventures that require capital. This benefits everyone in the future. The word settled into the room, and I felt something inside me shift again, deeper this time. Investing. Opportunities. Capital. They sounded important, serious, like things I should not question. But the image of the empty refrigerator stayed in my mind, sharp and undeniable. Emma's eyes narrowed slightly. You are using her money, she said. It was not a question. Rachel lifted her chin just a little. Temporarily, she replied. It will be returned. My stomach tightened again, but this time it was not just hunger. It was the weight of that word. Used. I felt my fingers press harder together, my nails lightly against my skin, grounding myself in the moment. Emma took a slow breath, her gaze steady, unshaken. Did she agree to that? She asked. Rachel's eyes flickered toward me for just a second before returning to Emma. She signed authorization, she said. Emma shook her head slightly. That is not what I asked, she said. Did she understand that her money would be used for your business? The room went quiet again. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears, steady and loud, like it was marking time for something important. Rachel did not answer right away, and in that silence, the truth felt closer than it had before. Emma turned to me once more, her voice softer now but carrying something stronger underneath it. "Mom," she said, "did you know they were using your money like this?" I closed my eyes for a brief second, and in that moment I saw everything clearly. The envelopes. The small amounts. The excuses. The quiet way things had changed without me noticing all at once. I opened my eyes. Again, my hand still, my voice steady in a way it had never been before. "No," I said. The word felt simple, but it carried something new with it. Something firm. Something real. Rachel's composure cracked just enough for me to see it, a brief flash of uncertainty that disappeared almost as quickly as it came. But Emma saw it too. I knew she did. Because the way she stood, the way she looked at Rachel now, was no longer questioning. It was decisive. "Then this stops," she said quietly. And as those words settled into the room, I felt something shift inside me again, not fear this time, not confusion, but something steadier, something stronger, like the beginning of a line I had not known I was allowed to draw. The words settled into the room like something final, something that could not be taken back, and I felt my breath catch slightly as I looked at Emma, trying to understand how she had become so certain so quickly. Rachel straightened, her composure returning in sharper lines now, her voice firmer, no longer trying to sound gentle. "You do not get to make that decision," she said. "This is already arranged. Legal. Signed." Emma did not flinch. She did not raise her voice. She simply stood there, steady, like she had already stepped into a place Rachel did not control. "Legal does not mean right," she replied quietly. The silence that followed felt different from before. It was no longer heavy with confusion. It was tight with tension, like something was about to break. I could feel my heart beating harder again, not from fear this time, but from something unfamiliar, something that felt almost like anticipation. Rachel's eyes moved briefly toward me, then back to Emma. "Daniel will not agree to this," she said. "He is handling everything. This is his decision as much as mine." At the mention of his name, my chest tightened slightly, and for a moment the old instinct returned, the quiet urge to step back, to avoid conflict, to keep things calm. I had spent years doing that. Keeping the peace. Not asking too many questions. Not pushing too hard. I stayed silent, but this time, the silence felt different. It was not agreement. It was watching. Emma did not react to Rachel's words the way I expected. She did not hesitate. She did not soften. "Then he can explain it tomorrow," she said. "At the bank." Rachel's jaw tightened just slightly, a small movement that revealed more than her words. "That is unnecessary," she said again, more firmly now. "Everything is already in place." Emma shook her head once. "If everything is in place," she said, "then there should be no problem showing it." The logic was simple. Clear. And for the first time, I saw something I had not seen before in Rachel's expression. Not control. Not confidence. Something closer to resistance. She stepped forward slightly, her voice lowering, more direct now. "You are creating conflict where there does not need to be any," she said. "This is a family matter. It should stay that way." Emma's gaze did not move. "It is a family matter," she agreed. "That is exactly why I am here." The words were calm, but they carried weight, the kind that does not need volume to be heard. I felt my hands relax slightly in my lap, the tension easing just enough for me to notice it. Something was shifting, not just in the room, but inside me. For so long, I had believed that asking questions would cause problems. That silence was the safer choice. That trust meant not looking too closely. But now, sitting there, listening to Emma, I realized something I had not allowed myself to see before. Silence had not protected me. It had made it easier for everything to happen without being questioned. Rachel exhaled slowly, then adjusted her posture again, as if resetting herself. "We can discuss this when Daniel gets here," she said. "He will make things clear." Emma nodded slightly. "Good," she said. "I would like that." The room grew quiet again, but it was no longer the same kind of quiet. It felt like waiting now. Like something had been set in motion that could not be undone. I shifted slightly in my chair, my fingers no longer trembling the way they had before, and I realized I was breathing more evenly. The tightness in my chest had not disappeared, but it had changed. It no longer felt like fear closing in. It felt like something opening instead. Emma walked over and sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her presence, steady and real. She did not say anything right away. She just placed her hand gently over mine, grounding me in a way I had not felt in a long time. I looked down at our hands, at the small, simple contact, and something inside me settled. Rachel stood across the room, watching, her expression controlled again but no longer unreadable. And as I sat there, between the two of them, I realized something else. Whatever happened next was not going to be quiet anymore. The silence stretched longer this time, not empty but filled with something waiting to surface, and I sat there with Emma's hand resting over mine, feeling the steady warmth of it, letting it anchor me as the minutes passed slowly. The house no longer felt like it was holding its breath. It felt like it was listening. Rachel moved first, walking toward the kitchen with measured steps, opening a cabinet as if she needed something to do, something normal, but the motion felt forced, out of place in a room that had already changed too much. I watched her without speaking, my eyes following the small details I would have ignored before, the way her movements were precise, controlled, never uncertain. That used to make me feel safe. Now it made me feel something else. Emma squeezed my hand gently, just once, and I realized she was not just comforting me. She was steadying me. "When is Daniel coming home?" she asked, her voice calm, cutting through the quiet without raising it. Rachel did not turn around immediately. "Soon," she said after a moment. "He had a late meeting." Emma nodded slightly, as if she expected that answer. "Good," she said. "We should all talk together." The word together lingered in the air, and I could feel the difference in it. It was not a suggestion. It was a decision. I shifted slightly in my chair, my back straighter than before, my hands no longer folded tightly in my lap. Something inside me was adjusting, slowly, like a muscle being used again after too long. The clock on the wall ticked softly, each second more noticeable now, each one marking the distance between what had been and what was coming next. I stayed silent, but this silence was not the same. It was not hiding. It was gathering. Rachel closed the cabinet and turned back toward us, her expression composed again, but I could see it. Now, the small tension around her eyes, the way her shoulders held just a little too still. "You are making this more dramatic than it needs to be," she said, her voice even but thinner than before. "There is no crisis here." Emma looked at her, steady, unshaken. "There is," she said. "You just do not see it the same way." Rachel crossed her arms again, a familiar posture, but it no longer carried the same certainty. "Everything has been handled responsibly," she replied. "Margaret has been cared for." The word cared for echoed in my mind, and I felt my chest tighten again, but this time it was followed by something else, something sharper. I looked down at my hands, at the faint lines, the slight tremble that was still there but weaker now, and I thought about the years behind me, the work, the saving, the careful choices that had built the life I once recognized. I had cared for myself then. I had made decisions. I had understood them. Emma's voice pulled me back. "Mom," she said softly, "have you seen your accounts at all in the past year?" I shook my head slowly, the answer coming easier now, clearer. "No," I said. I stopped checking. Saying it out loud made it feel more real, more final. Rachel stepped forward slightly, her voice quick to follow. "Because she did not need to," she said. "That is the point of management." Emma did not respond right away. She looked at me instead, her eyes searching, not for answers this time, but for something deeper. "Did you ever feel like something was wrong?" she asked gently. The question settled into me, and I felt it move through the memories I had kept quiet for so long. The small doubts. The moments that did not quite make sense. The feeling that something had shifted, but not knowing how to name it. I took a slow breath, my chest rising and falling, and for the first time I did not push the feeling away. "Yes," I said quietly. The word was simple, but it carried everything I had not said before. Emma nodded once, like that was all she needed to hear. Rachel opened her mouth to respond, but stopped, just for a second, and in that pause I saw it clearly. She was no longer ahead of the situation. She was reacting to it. The balance had shifted. And as I sat there, feeling my breath steady, my hand still, I realized something else had changed too. I was no longer waiting for someone else to explain my life to me. And whatever happened when Daniel walked through that door, I would be ready to hear it. The sound of the front door opening cut through the quiet like a line being drawn, sharp and unmistakable, and I felt my chest tighten for just a second before something steadier took its place. Footsteps followed, familiar, measured, the kind I had known for years without needing to think about it. Daniel stepped inside, setting his keys down with a soft clink against the table near the entrance, and for a moment everything looked normal, almost ordinary, like any other evening. But then he looked up and saw us. All of us. His eyes moved from Emma standing beside me to Rachel across the room, and then finally to me, sitting straighter than I had in a long time, my hands no longer hidden, my gaze steady. Something in his expression shifted, just slightly, like he sensed the difference before anyone said a word. "What is going on?" he asked, his voice calm but cautious, like he was already preparing for an answer he might not like. No one spoke immediately. The silence that followed was not empty. It was deliberate. Emma was the first to break it. "We need to talk," she said, her tone even, leaving no space for avoidance. Daniel exhaled quietly, loosening his jacket, placing it over the back of a chair as if he was trying to keep the moment grounded in routine. "About what?" he asked, though his eyes had already moved to Rachel, searching for direction. Rachel stepped forward slightly, her voice smooth again, practiced. "There is some confusion," she said. "Emma stopped by unexpectedly, and she is misunderstanding how we have been managing things." Emma did not look at her. She kept her eyes on Daniel. "I am not misunderstanding anything," she said. "I walked into this house and found Mom sitting in the dark with no food." The words landed clean, without emotion, but they carried enough weight to fill the room. Daniel's expression tightened, his brows pulling together as he looked at me again, really looked this time. I did not look away. I stayed silent, but this silence was no longer shrinking. It was steady. "Mom," he said, his voice softer now, uncertain. "Is that true?" My heart beat once, hard, but I did not hesitate. "Yes," I said. The word felt firm, anchored in something I had not used before. Daniel's jaw shifted slightly, and he glanced back at Rachel quickly, then at Emma again. That is not what is happening," he said, his voice uneven for the first time. "Everything is taken care of. The bills, the house, everything is handled." Emma took a small step forward, her posture calm but unyielding. "Handled does not mean she has nothing to eat," she replied. Daniel let out a breath, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I had seen since he was young, a sign that he was trying to regain control of the situation. "You are looking at one moment and making it bigger than it is," he said. "Mom is fine." She agreed to this. The word agreed hung in the air, and I felt it settle differently now than it had before. I lifted my chin slightly, my voice steady when I spoke. "I did not understand what I signed," I said. The room went quiet again, but this time the silence felt heavier, like something had been uncovered that could not be covered again. Daniel blinked, just once, his expression shifting in a way I had never seen before, something between surprise and resistance. "Mom, we explained it to you," he said quickly. "It was for your protection." Protection. I felt the word move through me, but it did not land the same way anymore. "You are using my money," I said, my voice calm, clear. Daniel's eyes flickered, just for a second, and that was enough. Emma saw it. I saw it. Even Rachel saw it. We are investing it, Daniel corrected, his tone sharper now. It is for the future. For all of us. Emma's voice cut in, steady and direct. Did she agree to fund your business? Daniel hesitated, and in that small pause, everything became clear. I felt my hands relax completely for the first time, the tension finally releasing. I stayed silent, but not because I was unsure. Because now, I was listening to the truth reveal itself without needing to chase it. And as I looked at my son standing there, searching for the right words, I realized something I had not allowed myself to think before. He had never expected me to ask. Daniel's hesitation did not last long, but it did not need to, because the moment it appeared, everything in the room changed. I could feel it, like a quiet shift beneath the surface that made everything clearer without anyone needing to say it out loud. Emma did not move. She did not repeat the question. She simply watched him, steady and patient, the kind of patience that does not give space for excuses. Rachel stepped in quickly, her voice smooth but tighter now, like she was trying to hold something together that was already slipping. This is being taken out of context, she said. We are building something long-term. Daniel has opportunities that require investment, and Margaret's funds are part of a larger plan that benefits the entire family. The words sounded practiced, structured, like something that had been said before in other conversations, in other rooms, where no one questioned them. But this time, they did not settle the same way. Emma shook her head slightly. That is not what I asked, she said. Did she agree to fund your business? Daniel's shoulders stiffened, and I could see the tension in the way he held himself, like he was balancing between what he wanted to say and what he knew could no longer be hidden. She trusted us, he said finally. The sentence hung in the air, incomplete in a way that made it louder than anything else he could have said. I felt something inside me still, something that had been moving for a long time now finally settling into place. I looked at him, really looked at him, not as my son, not as the boy I raised, but as the man standing in front of me, choosing his words carefully. That is not the same thing, I said quietly. My voice did not shake. It did not hesitate. It simply existed, steady and clear in a way I had not heard from myself before. Daniel blinked, just once, and in that moment I saw something I had not seen in years. Uncertainty. Emma stepped slightly closer, her presence calm but unyielding. Trust is not permission, she said. Rachel let out a slow breath, her composure tightening again. But there was a sharpness to it now, a slight edge that had not been there before. You are making this sound worse than it is, she said. Nothing has been taken. It is being used responsibly. I felt my fingers relax completely in my lap, the last of the tension slipping away. Without telling me, I said. Rachel's eyes flickered toward me, and for the first time, she did not respond immediately. That silence said more than anything else could have. Daniel shifted his weight slightly, his voice coming quicker now, more defensive. We were going to explain everything, he said. We just needed time. It is complicated. Emma's expression did not change. It is not complicated, she said. It is simple. You used her money without making sure she understood what you were doing. The words were direct, clear, leaving no space for interpretation. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it again, and I could see it in his eyes now. He was not in control of the conversation anymore. Rachel stepped forward again, her voice sharper now, no longer soft, no longer careful. This is still a legal arrangement, she said. Everything was signed. Everything is documented. Emma nodded slightly, like she expected that response. Good, she said. Then we will review it at the bank tomorrow. The word tomorrow landed differently this time. It was no longer a suggestion. It was a direction. Daniel's jaw tightened, his gaze shifting between Emma and me, searching for something that was no longer there. That is not necessary, he said, echoing Rachel's earlier words, but his voice did not carry the same certainty. I met his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I did not look away. It is necessary, I said. The room went still again, but it was not the same kind of stillness as before. It felt like something had been decided, something that could not be undone by explanations or careful words. I stayed silent after that, not because I had nothing to say, but because I did not need to say more. The truth was already there, sitting in the space between us, clear and undeniable. And as I looked at both of them, at the way they stood now, no longer leading, no longer certain, I realized something I had not allowed myself to believe before. The control they thought they had was already starting to slip. The room did not return to normal after that. It stayed still, but not in the quiet way it had before. This stillness had weight, like something had settled into place and refused to move. Daniel stood there for a moment, his eyes shifting between me and Emma, and I could see it clearly now. He was trying to find a way back to control, a way to explain things in a way that would make everything smaller again, easier to dismiss. "We can sort this out privately," he said finally, his voice lower now, more careful. "There is no need to involve anyone else." Emma did not respond right away. She looked at him steadily, then shook her head once. "It is already involved," she said. "You involved it the moment you used her money without making sure she understood." Rachel stepped in again, her voice sharper, more direct than before. "This is still within the family," she said. "There is no reason to escalate it." I felt something shift inside me at that word. Escalate. As if asking questions about my own life was something excessive. As if clarity was a problem. I stayed silent for a moment, but the silence did not feel like retreat anymore. It felt like choosing the right moment. Emma glanced at me briefly, and I could see she was waiting, not to speak for me, but to let me decide. That realization settled into me slowly, but firmly. No one was going to answer for me now. Not Rachel. Not Daniel. I took a slow breath, my chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm, and then I spoke. "I want to see everything," I said. My voice was calm, even, but it carried something different now. Something that did not ask for permission. Daniel looked at me quickly, his expression tightening. "Mom, you do not need to worry about all of that," he said. "It is complicated, and we have already taken care of it." I held his gaze. "I want to see everything," I repeated. The words did not change, but the way they landed did. Rachel's posture stiffened again, and I could see the calculation in her eyes, the quick shift as she adjusted to something she had not expected from me. "That is not necessary tonight," she said. "We can organize documents and go through them properly later." Emma spoke before I could respond. "Tomorrow works," she said. "At the bank." Daniel exhaled sharply, a small sound, but one that carried frustration now. "You are turning this into something it is not," he said. "We were trying to help." I felt the word move through me again, but it no longer had the same effect. It no longer softened anything. "Help does not leave me sitting in the dark," I said quietly. The sentence settled into the room, simple and undeniable. No one spoke immediately after that. Even Rachel did not interrupt. Daniel looked away for a brief second, then back at me, and I saw it clearly now. He was not just trying to explain anymore. He was trying to recover something he had already lost. "We will go tomorrow," he said finally, his voice controlled again, but not as strong as before. It sounded like agreement, but it also sounded like something else. Reluctance. Emma nodded once, accepting it without comment. The tension in the room shifted again, not disappearing, but changing shape, becoming something more defined. I leaned back slightly in my chair, my hands resting loosely now, no longer clenched, no longer trembling. The house did not feel the same as it had earlier that night. It did not feel like a place I had to shrink inside of anymore. It felt like a place where something had been uncovered, something that could not be hidden again. Rachel turned slightly, her movements controlled, but slower now, less certain. Daniel remained where he was, quiet, thinking, his usual confidence replaced by something more cautious. And as I sat there, watching both of them, I realized something I had not fully understood until that moment. The power in the room had shifted, not with a single word, not with a single action, but slowly, piece by piece, until it no longer belonged to them. I stayed silent, but this silence was no longer theirs. It was mine. The rest of the night passed without anyone trying to return things to normal, and that alone told me more than any explanation could have. No one suggested dinner. No one turned the situation into something small or temporary. The truth had already taken its place in the room, and it stayed there, quiet but undeniable. Emma did not leave. She stayed beside me, her presence steady, her hand occasionally brushing mine as if to remind me that I was not alone in this anymore. Rachel moved through the house with careful, measured steps, opening and closing drawers, checking her phone, doing things that looked ordinary on the surface but felt different now, like she was adjusting to a space that no longer responded to her the same way. Daniel spoke less as the evening went on. He stayed near the edge of the room, sitting down for a while, then standing again, his movements restless, his thoughts clearly somewhere else. I watched him quietly, not with anger, not with sadness, but with a clarity I had not allowed myself before. I saw the distance between who he had been and who he was now, and for the first time, I did not try to explain it away. I stayed silent, but I was no longer avoiding anything. I was seeing it. The clock moved forward, each minute steady and certain, and eventually the house grew quieter, not because the tension disappeared, but because everything that needed to be said for that night had already been said. Emma helped me to the kitchen at one point, opening cabinets again, looking through what little was there, and then quietly ordering groceries on her phone, her movements calm, practical, without needing to make a point of it. When the delivery arrived, the sound of the doorbell felt different than it had earlier that evening. It did not feel like an interruption. It felt like something being restored. Bags were set on the counter, simple things, bread, fruit, milk, items that used to be ordinary but now felt significant. Emma unpacked them slowly, placing each item carefully, bringing a kind of order back into the space without saying a word about it. I watched her, my chest tightening slightly, but not from fear. From recognition. From something that felt closer to relief. Rachel stood at a distance, observing, her expression controlled, but I could see it now, the subtle shift in her eyes, the awareness that something had changed in a way she could not easily adjust to. Daniel said very little during all of it. Once, he started to speak, then stopped, as if the words no longer came as easily as they once had. And that silence from him said more than any argument could have. Later, when the house settled into a quieter rhythm, Emma sat beside me again, her voice low but steady. "We're going to fix this," she said. I nodded slightly, the movement small but certain. I did not ask how. I did not ask what would happen next. For the first time, I did not feel the need to understand everything all at once. I only needed to know that I was no longer alone in it. The night stretched on, but it no longer felt heavy. It felt like a pause before something important. And as I sat there, my hands resting calmly in my lap, my breathing even, I realized something that settled deeply inside me. Tomorrow was not just about going to the bank. It was about seeing everything clearly, without explanation, without translation, without someone else deciding what I should or should not understand. I stayed silent, but this silence was no longer empty. It was ready. And for the first time in a long time, I was not afraid of what I might find when the truth was placed in front of me. The next morning did not arrive with noise or urgency, but with a quiet clarity that felt sharper than anything the night before. I woke up earlier than usual, not because I could not sleep, but because something inside me no longer wanted to stay still. The house felt different in the daylight. The same walls, the same furniture, but no longer heavy, no longer dim. I sat at the kitchen table, a cup of tea warming my hands, and for the first time in a long while, I did not feel like I was waiting for someone else to decide what the day would be. Emma joined me not long after, her presence calm, grounded, the same steady energy she had carried the night before. She did not ask if I was ready. She did not need to. She simply sat down across from me and gave a small nod, like we both understood what this day meant without needing to say it out loud. Daniel and Rachel came in together a little later, quieter than usual, their movements more measured, like they were stepping into something unfamiliar. No one tried to delay it. No one suggested we wait. That alone told me everything had already changed. The drive to the bank was quiet, but it was not uncomfortable. It felt focused, like every mile was leading toward something that had been avoided for too long. I watched the road ahead, my hands resting still in my lap, my breathing steady, my thoughts clear in a way I had not felt in years. When we walked inside, the cool air and bright lights made everything feel even more defined, more real. There was no hiding in a place like that. No soft explanations. No quiet redirections. Just numbers, records, facts. Emma spoke first at the front desk, her voice calm, direct, asking to review my accounts. There was no hesitation in her tone, and I realized I did not feel any either. We were guided to a desk, and as the screen turned toward me, I felt my chest tighten for just a second, not from fear, but from anticipation. The account details appeared, clear and undeniable. Monthly deposits. $10,000. Consistent. Exact. And then the transactions. Large transfers. Repeated. Directed into accounts I did not recognize. Amounts that made my breath pause, not because they were surprising anymore, but because now I could see them. Clearly. Fully. Without explanation. I stayed silent, but this silence was not avoidance. It was confirmation. Emma leaned slightly closer, her eye scanning the screen, her expression steady, absorbing everything without reacting too quickly. Daniel shifted beside us, his posture tight, his hands moving once before settling again, as if he did not know where to place them anymore. Rachel remained composed, but I could see it now, the careful stillness, the way she watched every detail, measuring what could and could not be said. "Can you explain these transfers?" Emma asked, her voice even, directed toward the banker but loud enough for everyone to hear. The banker nodded, neutral, professional, pointing to the entries, outlining dates, amounts, destinations. Business accounts. External holdings. Structured movements. Everything documented. Everything traceable. I listened, my eyes fixed on the screen, each number settling into place, each line removing another layer of uncertainty I had lived with for too long. I did not need to ask what it meant. I already understood. I turned my head slowly toward Daniel, my voice calm, steady, carrying none of the hesitation it once did. "You use my money," I said. It was not a question. Daniel exhaled. His shoulders dropping slightly, the resistance finally giving way to something else. Not explanation. Not justification. Something closer to acceptance. Rachel did not interrupt this time. She did not step in. She did not correct the words. Because there was nothing left to correct. The truth was already there, visible, undeniable, sitting between us like something that had always been present but never acknowledged. Emma sat back slightly, her gaze moving from the screen to me, and for a moment, neither of us needed to say anything. Because everything had already been said. I looked at the numbers one more time, then closed my eyes briefly, not to escape them, but to let them settle fully into my understanding. When I opened them again, I felt something different. Not anger. Not shock. Just clarity. Clean and steady. I stayed silent, and in that silence, I realized something that made everything else fall into place. I was no longer the one being managed. I was the one deciding what happened next.